Malleus Maleficarum, Latin for the Hammer of Witches, is one of the most infamous treatises on witchcraft and demonology, written in 1487 by two German inquisitors, Heinrich Kramer, Institutorus, and Jacob Sprenger. This book became the primary guide for inquisitors across Europe and played a key role in intensifying the witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries. It provided a comprehensive framework that shaped the legal and theological underpinnings of the witch trials, creating a chilling blueprint for persecution and torture that marked one of the darkest periods in European history. Historical context. By the late 15th century, Europe was increasingly concerned about witchcraft and its perceived threat to Christianity. This anxiety was exacerbated by the complex political and social climate of the time, including public unrest, wars, epidemics, and other disasters that were often interpreted as results of diabolical plots. This period was marked by religious conflicts, such as the growing tension between emerging Protestant movements and the established Catholic Church, which saw witchcraft as a manifestation of heresy and an affront to divine order. In this context, Malleus Maleficarum provided both a theoretical and practical foundation for persecuting those accused of witchcraft. The Church's stance against witchcraft was part of its broader struggle to maintain religious orthodoxy and authority. The invention of the printing press in the mid-15th century had led to the rapid dissemination of ideas, some of which challenged the established religious doctrines. Against this backdrop, Malleus Maleficarum became a tool for the Catholic Church to reaffirm its influence, presenting itself as the sole authority capable of combating the devil's work on earth. The treatise was given the papal bull Summus Desiderantes Effectibus in 1484 by Pope Innocent VIII, which officially sanctioned the persecution of witches and endorsed the work of Kramer and Sprenger. Structure and content. Malleus Maleficarum is divided into three parts, each focusing on different aspects of witchcraft and its prosecution. 1. The first part of the treatise deals with the theological and philosophical aspects of witchcraft. The authors discuss the existence of witches and explain why they should be considered heretics. This part of the book is aimed at proving that witchcraft truly exists and that witches are in league with the devil. Kramer and Sprenger present witchcraft as a phenomenon inherently linked to heresy, giving the Church a moral right and duty to persecute witches. They rely heavily on biblical texts, Church Fathers' writings, and medieval scholasticism to argue that witchcraft is not only real but also a significant threat to the Christian order. The authors also address potential skeptics by attacking those who doubted the existence of witches, labeling them as heretics themselves. 2. The second part provides a more detailed description of various types of witchcraft and magical practices. It focuses on how witches allegedly enter into pacts with the devil, what magical rituals they use to harm people and animals, and how their witchcraft affects the environment. This section also includes numerous examples and stories that emphasize the danger of witchcraft and the need to eradicate it. The authors describe various forms of maleficium, evil magic, such as causing illnesses, infertility, and natural disasters. This part of the text is filled with vivid depictions of alleged witchcraft activities, such as nocturnal gatherings, flying on broomsticks, and the casting of harmful spells, which serve to further instill fear and justify the need for harsh measures against suspected witches. 3. The third part offers practical advice on identifying, interrogating, and prosecuting witches. This section contains instructions on conducting trials against those accused of witchcraft, as well as detailed methods of interrogation, often involving torture. The authors also provide guidelines on what constitutes acceptable evidence and witnesses, requiring little material proof for a conviction. For instance, the testimony of children, criminals, and even those who had been previously accused of witchcraft could be used to convict others. This section underscores the presumption of guilt. The mere accusation of witchcraft was often enough to warrant an investigation, and confessions were frequently extracted through brutal torture methods, such as the strap-auto, thumb screws, and the rack. Key ideas and theses. The primary aim of Malleus Maleficarum is to convince readers of the reality of witchcraft and the need to eradicate it. In the treatise, Kramer and Sprenger present several important theses that shape the witch hunts for centuries to come. 1. The existence and danger of witchcraft. Witches are presented as a real and significant threat to the Christian world. According to the authors, they enter into alliances with the devil and use magical powers to cause harm. The authors argue that this alliance is part of a larger diabolical plan to undermine Christianity, making the eradication of witches not only a social duty but a divine mandate. The treatise employs a fear-mongering approach, using anecdotes and unverified cases to create a sense of urgency and danger. 2. The gender aspect. The authors claim that the majority of witches are women. This is explained by the idea that women are supposedly weaker in spirit and more prone to superstition and sin. Malleus Maleficarum argues that women are more susceptible to the temptations of the devil and, therefore, more likely to become witches. The text reflects the deep-seated misogyny of the time, portraying women as morally and intellectually inferior to men. It describes them as more impressionable and more inclined to lasciviousness, making them easy targets for the devil's seduction. This notion contributed to the disproportionate targeting of women during the witch hunts. 3. Methods of identification and interrogation. The book discusses various ways to identify witches, including confessions obtained under torture. The authors recommend the use of different forms of torture to force the accused to confess to witchcraft. Torture was seen as a legitimate tool to reveal the truth, and the treatise details methods that would ensure a confession, often under duress. These practices were justified as necessary to protect society from the perceived omnipresent threat of witchcraft. 4. Legal justification for witch hunts. Malleus Maleficarum served as a kind of legal and theological guide for inquisitors and other judicial bodies, providing justification for prosecuting witches as heretics. The authors carefully aligned their arguments with both canon law and Roman law, creating a legal framework that legitimized the prosecution of alleged witches. This legal alignment was crucial in allowing secular courts, which often worked in tandem with ecclesiastical authorities, to carry out the trials and executions. Influence and consequences. Malleus Maleficarum had a tremendous impact on the perception of witchcraft in Europe and significantly contributed to the intensification of witch hunts. It became widely circulated, especially in Central Europe, and was the primary manual for inquisitors and judges. The book was endorsed by the Church and actively used as a guide for combating witchcraft. The work's influence extended beyond the Church. Secular authorities also adopted its principles, leading to widespread witch trials in Protestant as well as Catholic regions. The period between the late 16th and early 17th centuries saw the height of witch hunts, with an estimated 40,000 to 60,000 people executed for witchcraft, the vast majority of them women. The paranoia fostered by Malleus Maleficarum helped create a culture of fear and suspicion, where accusations of witchcraft could easily spiral into mass hysteria, often exacerbated by local disputes, jealousy, and social tensions. Criticism and modern assessment. Since its publication, Malleus Maleficarum has been criticized by some contemporaries, particularly among more educated theologians and scholars. They pointed out the lack of logic and credibility in the author's arguments, as well as the abuse of power and cruelty of the methods. Over time, the book came to be viewed as a dangerous tool of fanaticism and intolerance. Despite this, the work continued to be influential until the Enlightenment, when skepticism and rationalism began to challenge such superstitious beliefs. Modern historians and researchers see Malleus Maleficarum as evidence of the fears and prejudices of its time. Its texts are often used to analyze gender biases, religious fanaticism, and social hysteria. Malleus Maleficarum is also considered a historical document illustrating how fear of the unknown can lead to systematic cruelty and violence. The treatise is now studied as an example of the dangers of unchecked authority and the societal consequences of combining ignorance with power. Malleus Maleficarum remains a symbol of the dark pages of European history. It is a book that combines the superstitions, fears, and religious fanaticism of its time, becoming a powerful tool to justify mass persecution and executions. Although Malleus Maleficarum is now regarded as a grim artifact of the past, it continues to serve as a reminder of the horrors that can result from a combination of ignorance and power. The legacy of the book, while sinister, also serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of reason, evidence, and humanity in the administration of justice.